What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode number 19 of the Ask Tony Show. Thank you so much for joining me. We're excited. We have some great questions coming out to you guys today. So let's get started.
How do you know if you have talent?
So talent is something that, in my opinion, a lot of people misunderstand, or maybe I misunderstand. I don't know. You guys can be the judge of that. But whenever somebody wants to do something and they want to do it at a high level, usually most people want to do it to the point where they can do it for a living. And so I'm a very systematic person. That's just the way that my brain works. I like to map stuff out, see if things work, test things and stuff like that. So in my opinion, if you're someone who wants to do something for a living, that means that you want to turn something into a business eventually. And the only difference is that, let's say if I'm a startup entrepreneur, I might have a certain product or a certain service that I want to pitch and grow to create my business. But if we talk about this example, you're talking about yourself. So you're the product, whether you're a singer, whether you're an athlete, whatever it is, you are the product. But at the end of the day, you're trying to build a business and do it for a living. That's the way I see it. So if that's your goal, then there's a common term in the business world that it's called proof of concept. You have to have proof of concept. And what proof of concept means is that you start with an idea. And whenever I talk about this, I've given talks about this in the past, but whenever I talk about this, I always give the example of sports because it's a very simple example and everybody gets it. But when you're trying to build a business, you start out with an idea. So if you translate it to the world of sports, your idea might be, I want to play in the NBA. That's the idea. So from there, you have to start to build proof of concept. And proof of concept just means that you take your idea and you test it. And you see if it works here, if it works there, if you got to tweak it, what do you got to do? And if enough people agree with your idea or you see that it starts to grow, then you have proof of concept. And based on that proof of concept, that's kind of the launching pad so that then you can go on to do more things. But if you don't have proof of concept, then your idea is never going to get off the ground. It's something that they ask people, if you've ever watched the TV show Shark Tank, they ask for proof of concept. They want to see the proof of concept. What have you done that lets me know that this could actually happen? So because I'm a very systematic person, I see personal achievement in the exact same way. So let's go back to the example of, I want to be a basketball player. So I want to play in the NBA, that's my idea. So step one is to get proof of concept. So let's say you're a really good basketball player, but you only play at your church. You play at your church every week or on weekends or whatever with the same guys, and you're the best player at your church. Whenever people see you play, they tell you that you're a great player. So now you have that first level of proof of concept. You're a good player, comma, at your church. What's step two? Well, you have to expand a little bit. So maybe you'll go and you'll play City League. And you'll go and you'll play. And if when you go play City League, you're still the best player on the floor, and people are still telling you that you're a great player, well, now your proof of concept is expanded. If you take it one step further, maybe you'll try out for your high school team. And then if you're the best player in high school, then you can see how the natural progression takes off. And eventually, if you're good enough, you'll make it to the NBA. So I put out a tweet yesterday explaining a little bit about this. And I got a ton of messages back, mostly from people that disagree. And they disagree because they were saying that, talent is overrated and things like that. I don't believe that talent is overrated. I think that the way that you can build something is to be talented. Now, talent doesn't mean that you're the best in the world on day one. But what it does mean is that you're good, that you have something. And upon that, you can build and you can get better and you can learn and you can sharpen your skills and eventually build something great. But for all of those people out there that feel like they don't know how to start, or they feel like they're scared, or they don't know if it's going to work, start with a small proof of concept and build upon that. One of the main concerns with my tweet was I said that you had to pay attention to people's comments, and if you had good comments, mostly good comments, because there's always going to be negative people, but if you have mostly good comments, then again, you expand and you go to more audiences, more people. And if you continue to get good comments, then that's because you have something. So again, to all my people that want to do something but aren't sure if they're good enough yet, you have to test it. Just like a business, you have to test your idea and see if it's feasible. And if it is, then you grow. And if it's not, then there's not a whole lot that you can do. There's a ton of business ideas and startups that don't work. But if you don't test it, and if you don't search for that proof of concept, then you're never gonna get anywhere.
I thought being an agent was easy. 4 months in, I have made zero money. What am I missing?
So yeah, being an agent is not easy. And if you've been in the business for 4 months and you haven't sold anything, that's fine. It took me 14 months to sell my first property. 14 months. So I went over a year making $0. I had 0 clients, I had nothing. Now, the important part is, at least what I did, and this is thanks to my mentor Daniel, but during those 14 months, I wasn't just sitting around doing nothing. I had very intense coaching. I was shadowing people. I started doing some showings. I started getting as involved as I could with my mentor, who was a top producer, and just trying to learn. So I had another job at the time. I had a side job. And so you don't have to start making a ton of money right off the bat, and you probably won't. Most of you won't. You have to create a base for yourself. You have to get people to know you. You have to make content. You have to gain people's trust, and you have to learn. Real estate is not an easy business. It's very, very complicated. And this is something that I tell the new agents all the time. It's not that easy, guys. It's not just going and opening a door and then your client loves the house and then you close and you make $10,000. Like, that's not how it works. There's a lot of heavy negotiation. There's a lot of legal implications. You're dealing with somebody's house. It's not, I'm selling you a protein bar or I'm selling you something else. This is somebody's property, and they're bringing tens of thousands of dollars of their saved money, and they're trusting you to help guide them through that process so that they can invest that money properly. And so, number one, you have to be prepared. So what I did is I took 14 months of just training. I read a ton of books. I got on a ton of e-courses. I listened to a ton of podcasts. I shadowed people. I did showings. And then by the time those 14 months were up that I got my first client, I was ready to go. So don't get discouraged, but don't sit around and do nothing either. You have to be doing something, learning, growing, progressing, so that when you get your shot, you can win.
What's your take on podcasting for a small business? I run a small bakery in town. Why would I have a podcast?
Podcasting, I love podcasting because I like to talk. And I like to hear myself talk, and I like to talk to other people. Now, it really depends on your own skill set. If you're a local bakery, what I can tell you is if you have a knack for talking to people and you like to interview and you're a people person, a podcast could actually be very helpful. Not so much because you're going to talk about your cookies or your baked goods. You can in certain episodes, but because it gives you the opportunity to interview other people. And if you have friends that are in other sectors, or if you have friends who are entrepreneurs or whatever it is, if you can get them on your podcast, then people will start to share your podcast because they're on it. That's something that happens a ton because everybody likes to be kind of the center of attention for a little bit. So if I'm on a podcast and then the creator of that podcast shares it, I'm going to share it. I want people to know that I was on a podcast. So how could that help your business? Well, if you name, your podcast, whatever, Crystal's Cookies or whatever it could be, Crystal's Cookies Podcast, and you bring local people that are influential in your area, and you bring them on your podcast, and you talk about their life, or you talk about their success, or you talk about their business, you talk about things that they're interested in, they're going to share that podcast, and then people through that channel are going to learn about you, and they'll eventually buy your cookies. But if you're not a people person, or you don't like to talk, or you're an introvert, it might get much harder. And it's not going to be your number one main source of marketing, but it can be a very effective tool if you do it properly. If you just sit and talk about cookies all day, it's probably not going to catch as much steam, and it's not going to work for you. The key is to get people in your area that will share that content and create that viral link.
Do I have to pay taxes if I sell my house?
Taxes are complicated. Now, I'm not an accountant, so technically I'm not supposed to give you guys tax advice. So if you have a specific case, talk to your accountant. But what I can tell you is that there are certain rules and certain guidelines. There's a rule, for example, if you have a property that is FHA, if you sell your property in less than 2 years, if it's your own property where you live, if you sell it in less than 2 years that you've lived there, then that sale has to go and be reported to the IRS. Also, if you're a single person and you sell a property for more than $250,000, same thing applies. The title company has to report that sale to the IRS. If you're married and you sell a property for more than $500,000, then same thing, it has to go to the IRS. So the tax implications, whether you have to pay tax or not, I don't know. It depends on the situation. But whether or not it has to be reported to the IRS depends on how long you've lived in the property. The rule is 2 out of the last 5 years, and the purchase price, how much you sold it for, not how much you made, how much you sold it for. Those 2 factors are largely going to determine whether or not the sale has to go to the IRS, or if you're safe. If you've lived in it for 15 years and you're married and you sell for $400,000, then the IRS, that doesn't have to be reported, and you're good. So again, check with your accountant and get yourself a smart agent that can help you navigate those things so that you don't make mistakes. Because there are a lot of people, I've seen this myself, a lot of people, they'll sell a property and they were never told that they might have to pay taxes, and they made $100,000 and now they have to pay $25,000, $30,000 in taxes, and they didn't know that, and that's a huge hit. So make sure before you sell a property, check those details and make sure, do you have to pay, do I not? Talk to your accountant, really learn what the rules are so that you don't get yourself in trouble.